Hello, my name is Madeline, and at this year's Christmas dinner, my sister looked me in the eye and said, "Still trying to prove you matter? That's cute." My mom laughed. My dad kept eating. No one blinked. But I did. Not because it hurt, but because I finally understood. I was never part of the family they told the world I belonged to. I paid the bills, I gave them the house, I stayed quiet, and they edited me out, photo by photo, memory by memory. So I stopped replying and started removing the pieces of me they thought they owned. But when you stop playing the role they've written for you, what happens next? Do they chase you? Do they crumble? Or do they finally face what they built without you? Let's find out. The drive from Portland down to Bend took me a little over 3 hours. Snow clung stubbornly to the shoulders of the highway, and the trees looked like they'd been dusted with flour. I had the heater on high, the radio turned low, and for most of the drive I rehearsed the same polite lines I'd used every other Christmas. "Thanks for having me." "What a lovely meal." "It's so good to see everyone." Those words felt empty in my mouth, like gum chewed too long. Still, I practiced them. Habit is a strange thing. It makes you prepare for kindness even when you know it's not coming. I pulled into the driveway just after 6. Their house glowed with warm lights strung across the eaves, but the yard was silent. No one waiting at the door. No sound of kids yelling, "Aunt Maddie's here," like in the commercials. I hauled 2 bags of gifts from my trunk, their paper handles biting into my palms. Inside, the smell of prime rib and cinnamon-scented candles mixed into something rich and heavy. The entryway rug was wet from boots. Coats already hung on hooks. It was clear. Everyone was here. Everyone but me. I stood for a second in the foyer, waiting for footsteps. Nothing. No one came to take the bags from me. I set them down, took off my gloves, and followed the sound of clinking silverware. The dining room was already full. The big table, the same one Dad built back when money was tight, had been extended with 2 extra leaves. A place for everyone. Except there was no chair pulled for me. Celine sat at the far end, her hair perfect as usual, champagne glass in hand. My mother perched to her right, laughing at something on Celine's phone. Dad was at the head of the table, carving steak with slow, practiced strokes. My chair from last year, corner, near the window, was taken by one of Celine's friends. I hesitated. No one noticed. I took a step toward the table. Celine finally turned, that half-smile curling her mouth. "Oh," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're here again? Still trying to prove you matter? That's cute." Her eyes flicked back to her phone. Mom laughed softly, like it was an inside joke. Dad didn't even look up. The clink of silverware went on. I felt my face heat, but I didn't say anything. Not one person shifted to make space. Not a single "Celine, knock it off." I forced a smile and set my gifts down at the edge of the room. It felt like laying flowers at my own grave. Then I slid into the only empty spot, a chair tucked half under a sideboard, like an afterthought. The smell of steak hit me like a wall. I picked up my fork and pretended I belonged. While they chatted about vacation plans and home remodels, my mind drifted. Every Christmas, I'd been the one who drove down early, who bought extra wine, who paid the deposit for the caterer because Mom couldn't figure out the app. I'd taken pictures, tagged them all on Facebook, made sure no one was left out. And yet, every year, when the stories were told later, my name disappeared. In family group texts, I was a footnote. In the photo collages on Mom's wall, my face was cropped at the edge, like an accident no one fixed. The sound of their laughter felt sharp, like glass under my skin. I buttered a roll and remembered last Christmas, when Celine had opened the necklace I'd bought her without even saying thank you, and Mom had leaned over to whisper, "She's under a lot of stress, honey." Always an excuse. Always a reason I should swallow it. I took a bite of dry bread. Something inside me settled, not a flare of anger, just a quiet, cold weight. My hand slipped into my bag under the table. My phone screen lit my lap. I opened the catering app. My name was on every invoice. I scrolled to future payments. My thumb hovered over the button for a moment, then pressed cancel. No confirmation needed. The next dinners, the spring brunches, the summer barbecue, They were no longer mine to fund. I put the phone away and lifted my head. No one had noticed. Celine was telling a story about her new marketing client. Mom was topping off her champagne. Dad cut into his steak, eyes on the TV, muted in the corner. I chewed slowly and thought, I came all this way to be erased again. But not next year. Next year, the silence would arrive before I did. I looked at the gifts piled by the door. Bright paper, perfect bows. None of it mattered. Not tonight. My reflection in the window was faint, a ghost behind the glow of their lights. They had built their little world, and I was still trying to fit inside it. I realized as the noise of their conversation rolled over me that I didn't need to. This year, I thought, they'll remember the quiet more than any present I've ever brought. The thought wasn't bitter. It was calm, a plan, already in motion. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and relentless. Inside, I smiled and took another bite, tasting nothing. Morning came in thin, gray light seeping through the guest bedroom curtains. The room smelled faintly of lavender from a sachet Mom kept in the drawers, but it couldn't hide the heavier scent of last night's food drifting in from the kitchen. I lay still for a moment, listening. No footsteps on the stairs, no soft knock to see if I wanted coffee. The house creaked, old wood settling in the cold, and for the first time, I felt like an intruder in the place where I'd grown up. I sat up slowly. The guest bed was still dressed with the same quilt from my teenage years, faded roses and fraying edges. On the nightstand sat an empty water glass, but no note, no gift bag waiting for me. Christmas morning, and not even a token. I checked my phone. The family group chat had exploded overnight with photos of Celine handing out stockings, Dad carving meat, the nieces opening gifts. My name didn't appear once, not in a caption, not in a thank you, not even an emoji. Sliding my feet into slippers, I walked down the hall. The carpet muffled my steps. The kitchen smelled of coffee and bacon, but the chairs were empty. They'd already eaten. A stack of plates sat in the sink, crumbs of cinnamon roll clinging to them. On the table was a pile of cards and ribbons. None of them addressed to me. I leaned against the counter, memories surfacing without permission. Last year, the same house, same table. I had arrived early then, too, driven down after work, trunk full of food, arms aching from carrying it all inside. Celine had come late, breezing in with her designer coat and a story about a canceled flight. Everyone had stood to hug her. I had stayed at the stove, stirring gravy. Later that night, my niece had passed out thank you cards. She was 8, proud of her careful handwriting. She handed one to me, then snatched it back, giggling. The front said, "To Aunt Madeline," but the name was scribbled out. Underneath, in bolder ink, someone had written, "To Aunt Celine." Mom said I should give this to Aunt Celine instead, she said, skipping off before I could answer. No one had said a word. They'd laughed, told her to sit down, passed her a cookie. I'd smiled and folded the card in half under the table. That had been the year I paid for every bit of the holiday, from the ham to the tree delivery. I blinked back to the present, the sting as fresh as the smell of coffee in the kitchen. My hands gripped the edge of the counter. I could still feel the indent of that scribbled-out name, as if it had been written on my skin instead of paper. A patter of feet broke the silence. My youngest niece came running in, hair wild, pajamas bunched at her ankles. She skidded to a stop when she saw me. "Oh," she chirped, eyes wide with recognition, but no greeting. Then she said it, the words sliding out with the innocent sharpness only children manage. "Mommy said you're the helper who bought Grandma's house." I stared at her. My heart gave one slow thud. In the doorway behind her, Celine appeared, coffee mug in hand. She laughed lightly. "Kids, right? They mix things up." She took a sip without looking at me. "She thinks you're like part of the staff or something." Everyone laughed it off, but I didn't. I couldn't. I froze. The tile beneath my slippers felt icy. In my head, a reel of unpaid debts unspooled. Birthday checks, grocery runs, school fees, all the quiet ways I'd held them up while they called me selfless, generous, then turned me into a shadow in their stories. The helper. The phrase lodged in my chest. I turned to the fridge, needing something to focus on. Magnets held up photos of Celine at the lake, Celine at the new spa, Celine's kids on the first day of school. In the center was Celine's Christmas card, all glossy smiles. There was no card from me, not pinned, not anywhere. Even my handwriting had been erased from this kitchen. A sound escaped me, half a laugh, half a sigh. I wasn't sad anymore. I was finished. I thought about the times I'd paid the property tax on this very house, slipping the receipt to Mom so she wouldn't have to worry. Now, I was the helper. I could feel my fingers loosen on the counter, the tension slipping away like a rope I'd been holding too long. I walked to the mudroom, pulled on my boots, and opened the back door. The cold hit me like a reset button. Snow blanketed the yard, the pine trees heavy with it, the world muted except for the crunch under my soles. Behind me, the house buzzed faintly with voices, but they were muffled, far away. Out here, the air smelled clean. I drew in a long breath. "They don't forget," I whispered. "They rewrite." My own voice surprised me, steady and low. A smile formed, not the polite mask I'd worn at dinner, but something real, not in pain, but with decision. I stepped off the porch into the snow, leaving a clear set of footprints behind me. Each step felt lighter. I wasn't vanishing, I was reclaiming, piece by piece, removing the parts of me they thought they owned. By the time I reached Portland, the city was gray and dripping with post-Christmas rain. The drive from Bend had been long and silent, miles of wet pavement unrolling under my tires like an endless tape. My car still smelled faintly of pine needles from the wreaths I'd brought down, a scent now soured with the memory of last night. When I pulled into my apartment's small parking lot, the world felt as quiet as the inside of a closed envelope. I carried my overnight bag up the narrow stairs. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Neat, pared down, a place built for breathing rather than entertaining. The radiator hummed softly, releasing just enough heat to keep the windows from fogging. I set my keys on the counter, dropped the bag, and placed the small pile of gifts I'd brought back. Cheap candles, a box of stale cookies with no card attached, on the kitchen table. Not one of them had been labeled for me, but I'd been told to take them anyway because there was extra. The contrast to my parents' home was stark. Their house was all clutter and noise, every surface covered with knickknacks, photos, and crumbs of someone else's celebration. Here, it was clean, cold, silent. My apartment smelled like lemon cleaner and rain-soaked wool. I stood for a moment just listening, as if silence itself could stitch up the jagged places inside me. I took off my coat, hung it neatly on the hook, and walked to the desk by the window. My laptop sat there like an unopened letter I'd been avoiding for years. Outside, the street was empty, rain washing away the last bits of snow that had survived the drive over the mountains. I made a cup of tea, chamomile, no sugar, and sat down. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. The file had been there a long time, tucked into a folder named simply MJ. My initials. I clicked it open. A spreadsheet bloomed across the screen, rows and columns of numbers I'd entered late at night after sending another check, paying another bill, covering another emergency. Roof repairs, $15,000. Celine's car insurance for 2 years, $6,200. Down payment on the house they all now called Mom and Dad's, $29,000. School supplies for the nieces, Christmas trees, surprise utility bills, temporary loans never repaid. Line after line after line. The total at the bottom glared back at me, $92,450. I traced the number with my fingertip, like reading Braille. Each figure carried a memory, late-night calls. Mom's, "Honey, could you just this once?" Dad's gruff, "You're doing better than we are." Every dollar was a piece of myself, quietly handed over until there was nothing left but the story they told, that I was the helper, the extra, the one who never mattered. I leaned back in my chair. For years I had kept this file for myself, as a reminder that my invisibility was purchased, not earned. I had never planned to show it to anyone. But last night, watching Celine smile while my niece called me the helper, something had shifted. I was done waiting for recognition. I was done playing along. I opened a new email. The subject line typed itself beneath my hands. For your records. No exclamation points, no accusations, just a simple title. I attached the PDF of the spreadsheet, clicked Send to Group, and added the family's shared email thread. For a moment, I stared at the cursor blinking in the message box. My fingers moved again, writing a single line. No need to reply. This is just documentation. Then I hit Send. The little paper plane icon shot off the screen. I turned off notifications. I didn't check for a response. I didn't need to see their words, their excuses, their mock outrage. Instead, I rose from the desk, poured another cup of tea, and went to the window. The rain had slowed to a mist, blurring the city lights. Across the street, a man walked his dog, bundled in a bright red parka. Everything looked ordinary, but inside me, something had locked into place. If they won't say my name out loud, I murmured, let them choke on the numbers. The steam from my tea curled around my face. It felt like armor. I set the mug down and opened another folder on my desktop. This one was labeled TC Property Docs. Inside were PDFs of deeds, receipts, emails. My name stared up from the title of the house, crisp and black. It wasn't Mom and Dad's house at all. It was mine. I had paid for it. I had protected it. And they had rewritten me out of its history. I clicked one file, then another, until the screen was filled with proof. Wire transfers, signatures, tax documents, everything in my name. My reflection glimmered faintly in the laptop screen, a double exposure of who I had been and who I was becoming. Let's talk about what they think they own, I said aloud, my voice steady. The rain outside tapped gently against the window, like a metronome marking the start of something new. I wasn't waiting for their next insult. I wasn't going to plead for space at a table I'd already paid for. I was going to change the story, line by line, like correcting a ledger. I had just closed the folder on my laptop when the heaviness in my chest gave way to something quieter. Focus. The next morning, December 27th, I was already up before sunrise, watching the light shift from steel gray to a dull pewter through my kitchen window. The snow in Portland had started melting, but the air still carried a bitter edge. I made coffee and sipped it slowly, standing by the window in silence. After finishing my second cup, I pulled out the folder labeled TC Property Docs again and took one more look at the deed. My name was still there, bold and unchallenged. I opened a new email and typed in my attorney's address. Subject: Activate Restriction Clause. It took me all of 30 seconds to write the message, just a few lines confirming what we'd discussed 2 years ago: restrict access, usage, and all modifications to the house unless I sign off. Legally, it was already mine. But this step, this was the signal flare. The moment that turned their assumptions into dust. As the email sent, I leaned back and stared at the screen. I wasn't angry, not anymore. What I felt now was sharper, cleaner, precision. They'd tried to turn me into a footnote in their family narrative, but I had the title deed and the receipts. They'd built their history on top of my silence, and I was done providing the foundation. Around 10, I packed a box with a few leftover things I had stored at the house, some old yearbooks, a cast-iron pan that used to be mine before Mom borrowed it indefinitely, a blanket I hadn't seen in years but found stuffed in the linen closet during Thanksgiving. I didn't text anyone. I didn't warn them I was coming. I wasn't asking for permission to visit a house I legally owned. The drive to Bend was quiet, no music, just the sound of tires slicing through damp pavement and my thoughts keeping pace with the rhythm of the wipers. It was nearly 2 in the afternoon when I pulled into the driveway. Their cars were there. All of them. Dad's truck, Celine's ridiculous white SUV with the vanity plate, even my brother Jake's old Honda. They were home. It didn't matter. I rang the bell once, out of habit. No one answered. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. I stepped inside, letting the cold air follow me in. The heat hit me hard. Thermostat turned too high like always. The living room looked like it hadn't changed in 20 years. Mismatched throw pillows, dusty bookshelves, a flickering TV playing on mute. I walked slowly toward the stairs, the box in my arms. No one greeted me. No voices called down. If they heard the door, they were pretending they didn't. I climbed the stairs deliberately, each step creaking under my boots. I paused at the top, just outside the hallway that led to my old room, to the office, and, most importantly, to the wall. The family photo wall had always been Mom's pride. Generations of smiles, arranged by year and occasion. Birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. Christmases. I had used to love seeing my younger self in those pictures, how my bangs changed, my clothes matured, but my place had stayed the same. Until now. The newest photo was at the center. A recent group portrait, clearly taken at Thanksgiving. Everyone was there. Mom, Dad, Jake, his kids, Celine. And next to Celine stood a man I'd never seen before, arm around her shoulder, like he'd earned a permanent seat at the table. He was in my spot, literally. They had retaken the photo, cropped the original, or restaged it entirely, and I was gone, cleanly removed. I didn't speak, didn't make a sound. I set the box down carefully against the wall and pulled out my phone. One click, flash off. I took a photo. The image saved instantly, quiet as a breath. I didn't send it to anyone, just added a caption, written in the note app below it. They edited the story, so I'll edit the ending. Then I walked to Dad's office at the end of the hall. The door was closed. I didn't knock. Instead, I slid the manila envelope under the crack of the door. Inside was a copy of the restriction clause, the notarized title document, and the letter from my attorney outlining next steps. No dramatic cover letter, no warning shot, just facts, lined up like soldiers. I stood for a moment outside the door, listening. There was no sound from inside, no shuffling, no footsteps coming toward me. I turned and headed downstairs, moving through the hallway like a ghost they hadn't realized was already done haunting them. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, the back door creaked open. Celine stepped inside, sunglasses perched on her head even though the clouds outside had swallowed the sun hours ago. Her manicured hand still held a set of car keys, jingling lightly. We locked eyes. She didn't say a word, just narrowed her gaze slightly, as if trying to decipher whether I was here to cause a scene or slip away unnoticed. I gave her a single nod. A firm, silent gesture, not hostile, not warm, just finished. She blinked once, and for the first time, I saw something flicker behind her perfect expression, something small and uncertain. A crack, barely visible, but enough. Then I turned and walked past her without a word. The weight I'd carried for years didn't fall away all at once. It didn't float up into the air and vanish, but it shifted, redistributed itself into something more stable. A boundary, a spine. The silence behind me held firm. She didn't call my name, didn't ask what I was doing, and I didn't look back. After slipping past Celine in that entryway, neither of us breaking the silence, I didn't drive off right away. I sat in the car for several minutes, engine idling, watching the house that once felt like a fixed star in my life. It didn't feel like mine anymore, not emotionally, not physically, and yet legally, it was. That irony made me exhale one dry, tired laugh before I finally pulled away from the curb. The highway back to Portland felt colder than usual. My phone stayed face down in the cup holder. I didn't need any more noise. I made it home by early evening, just as the sun was dipping behind low-hung clouds. The sky looked bruised, purple, gold, gray, all fading fast. By the time I stepped into my apartment, the city lights had flickered on. I heated up leftover soup, poured it into the same mug I'd been using since college, and sat down at my small kitchen table. One spoonful in, my phone lit up. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the area code, Bend. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, the notification chimed. I wiped my hands, opened it, and hit play. My mother's voice spilled through the speaker, half exasperated, half offended. Hi, sweetie, it's Mom. The heater's off again. It's just freezing in here. We didn't know you stopped paying the utilities. I mean, I don't even know how to log into the site. Can you just fix it, please? I stared at the phone like it had just insulted me personally. She hadn't called to ask if I was okay. She hadn't mentioned the envelope, or the photo, or the fact that I'd stood in their house that day and been erased, again. I picked up my laptop from the couch and opened the utility dashboard. One glance told me what I already knew. Autopay was off. The account name was mine. The bills? Current through December. I clicked through the payment history. Every month for the last 4 years, that warm living room had been courtesy of me. The moment I shut it off, the temperature in that house finally dropped enough for them to notice. I took a screenshot, attached it to a reply, and typed, "I thought Celine was the responsible one now." Then I closed the thread. As I reached for my soup again, another notification popped up, this time from Facebook. Celine had posted a photo, a black and white image of Grandma sitting in her old recliner, wearing that scarf she loved. The caption read, "Still remember organizing every detail for you, Grandma. Your service was beautiful. You deserved nothing less." My spoon paused halfway to my mouth. I reread it, then again, and again. 2 years ago, I'd been the one who arranged that entire funeral. The casket, the program. I wrote the eulogy. I paid the florist because Mom didn't want to use her emergency fund. I stood at the front of that chapel and kept it together when everyone else cried. I did that, and Celine was in Tahoe. I clicked on the comment box beneath the post. My fingers hovered. I started to type. "You weren't even there." Deleted it. Typed again. "Actually, I..." Backspaced the whole thing. Finally, I wrote, "Correction. I arranged the funeral. You were in Tahoe." Then I hit post. And just like that, I turned off notifications. My heart didn't pound. My palms didn't sweat. I didn't pace or second guess or text anyone for validation. I just sat there, breathing steadily, while the winter air pushed faint drafts through the windows. 5 minutes passed, then 10. My phone stayed dark. Then the family group chat lit up. "Dad, let's not air dirty laundry here. This is family." Of course, it was always about appearance, never accountability. I stared at his message for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, I typed, "Family should be the last place lies survive." I hit send. The chat went quiet. No one replied. I left my phone on the table, face up this time, and poured the rest of my soup down the drain. They had let Celine take credit for everything from my gifts to my grief, and when I pointed it out, they didn't rush to apologize. They circled the wagons, protected the lie. Not for the first time, but this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't doubt myself. Because here's the thing about warmth. It's only real when it's earned. And after all these years of covering for them, paying the bills, holding their history together, I finally realized I was the only source of heat in that house. So I turned it off. By the time December 29th arrived, I had grown used to the quiet of my apartment. Not the aching kind that wraps around your shoulders when loneliness sinks in, but the intentional kind, the quiet you choose, build, protect. Silence that didn't ache anymore. It just was. A steady companion, a boundary, not a punishment. No new messages, no calls from Dad. Not even one of Mom's signature texts layered with passive-aggressive overtones about keeping the family close or showing up for one another. Just stillness. And the absence itself had become an answer. I stood in the kitchen, making coffee, drizzling cream in slow spirals and listening to the hum of the fridge. The gray light outside was thick and unbothered, the kind of late December light Portland wears like a shrug. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text or a call. It was a different kind of alert, one I hadn't seen in months. A notification from the credit monitoring service I'd signed up for after the last financial surprise from my family. Just in case. New inquiry. Bend Auto Group. At first, I thought I misread it. Maybe it was a spam email or a false positive. But as I wiped my hands and opened the full alert, the details landed like a brick in my stomach. Name, Madeline. James, address, my apartment. DOB, mine. Credit, type, auto loan. Pre-approval, inquiry dealership, Bend Auto Group. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't co-signed, hadn't shared my social security number with anyone. Not recently, not ever. I wasn't even in Bend. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, screen glowing. For a moment, I just stared at it, letting the information settle. The air felt colder suddenly, sharper, and then, like clockwork, my body caught up with my mind. I knew exactly who it was. I didn't pace. I didn't yell. I didn't even reach for my coat. I just picked up the phone again and called the dealership. Bend Auto Group, this is Marcus. How can I help you today? The voice on the other end was chipper, the kind of sales pitch cheerfulness that belongs in a showroom. I kept my tone even. Hi, yes, this is Madeline James. I received a credit alert indicating that an auto loan inquiry was made under my name. Can you tell me who submitted it? He hesitated. Papers shuffled, keys clicked. Let me check. A pause. Then, yes, ma'am, we do have a record of that. It came through yesterday. Said she was acting on your behalf, had a signed letter of authorization. My throat tightened. Can you describe her? I asked. He hesitated again, voice faltering just slightly. Blonde, mid-30s, drove a white SUV. She said you were busy and asked us to rush it. That was all I needed. Celine. Of course it was her. She'd gone from taking credit for my words, my work, my emotional labor, to literally taking credit in my name. And now she'd tried to turn me into a ghost with a credit score. I ended the call politely, thanked him, hung up. Then I sat at the table for a few seconds, breathing slowly. The emotion wasn't rage, it wasn't even shock. It was clarity. I opened the legal folder on my laptop. Years of documentation stared back, proof of generosity twisted into obligation, utility bills in my name, property records, screenshots of bank transfers, emails confirming the payments I had made on behalf of family, on behalf of her, receipts once kept to show I cared, now refiled as evidence. I clicked New Document and began writing. Formal tone, professional structure, no emotion, just facts. I submitted a fraud alert to the 3 major credit bureaus, uploaded the dealership's information, attached a screenshot of the alert, attached a scanned image of my ID. I copied my attorney on every submission. When the final confirmation came through, I didn't celebrate. I just sat back, shoulders settling, and opened a new email. Subject: Unauthorized financial activity. Formal notice. To Celine. CC. Family group chat. Attorney's name. And then I wrote, Celine, this morning I received notice of an attempted auto loan under my name. You do not have, nor have you ever had, my authorization to apply for credit or enter financial agreements on my behalf. This constitutes fraud. Effective immediately, any further attempts will result in full legal action. Documentation has been filed with the appropriate agencies. This is the only notice you will receive. No salutation, no sign-off, no space for interpretation. Send. Then I opened my banking dashboard. There it was, the last thread. The family account I'd set up years ago to help mom and dad pay bills when things were tight. The one I'd kept active long past necessity. The one I hadn't touched, even when they stopped calling. Balance, $11,834.12. Every cent of it came from me. Quiet deposits made monthly, automatically. Invisible help no one ever acknowledged, only expected. I hovered over the Close Account button. Are you sure? This action is irreversible. Yes. Click. The screen refreshed. Balance, $0. Account, closed. Just like that, the last cord snapped. I exhaled slowly. My heart didn't race. My fingers didn't tremble. The feeling wasn't triumph. It was release. I picked up my phone one last time and opened the group chat. Typed, "This was never about money. It was about erasure. I'm done financing my own disappearance. Send." Seconds passed. Then my screen lit up. Celine, calling. I didn't answer. Call again. Decline, again. Mute, face down. They couldn't manipulate silence when it refused to echo back. I walked to the window. The sky outside was turning soft, streaked with the first hints of night. City lights flickered to life, blinking across rooftops like they had no idea the world was cracking wide open. Somewhere in Bend, the heater was off. The credit was denied. The account was closed. And for the first time, the consequences finally belonged to the people who caused them. It was late, maybe close to midnight, when I sat back down at my desk with a cup of lukewarm tea. The lamp above my head flickered once, then steadied, casting a soft pool of light over the keyboard. The quiet inside the apartment was thick, the kind that makes every sound feel deliberate. I was halfway through reviewing documents for the fraud report when a new notification popped up on my security app. Motion detected, December 2022, archive accessed. For a second, I blinked at the screen, confused. Archive footage? From last year? I clicked. It opened directly to my front porch camera. The timestamp read December 25th, 2022. My fingers froze over the touchpad as I watched Celine step into frame, arms full of glossy gift bags and a small stack of thank you cards. She paused on the porch, glanced behind her, then rifled through the stack. She held one card up to the camera. My name was printed neatly on the front. To Madeline. She stared at it for a moment, then reached into her purse, pulled out a small sticker, and slapped it over my name. The new label read, To Celine. Then she walked inside and set the card on the entry table with the others, smiling as if nothing had happened. I stared at the screen, the silence in the room pressing hard against my chest. I'd forgotten about that card. That entire week had blurred in my memory. But there it was. Undeniable. Not just exclusion, replacement, intentional, smiling, and casual. The ease of it was the worst part. Without hesitation, I opened the video editor on my laptop. I trimmed the footage down to 17 seconds. No music, no captions, no edits. Then I opened the family group chat. I didn't type a message. I didn't offer context. I just uploaded the clip. The app marked it, sent. Then came the read receipts. Jake first, then Dad, then Mom, then Celine. Each icon blinked in one by one like the flipping of a switch. No one responded. I waited 5 minutes. 10, nothing. I closed the app and set the phone on the edge of the desk. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way I had been. This wasn't fury anymore. It was exposure, light on mildew. That footage wasn't for apology, it was for clarity. I was about to return to my files when another notification popped up. This one from my bank. New login attempt. Alert. I clicked. Device, iPhone. Location, Bend, Oregon. Time, 11:47 p.m. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes briefly. Celine? Again. She wasn't just pushing boundaries now. She was trying to tear them down. Even after the email, even after the fraud report, she was still clawing at whatever access she thought she was owed. I reached for my phone and called my lawyer. It rang twice before he answered, voice groggy but alert. Madeline? Sorry to call late, I said. But we've got a pattern now. She just tried to access my bank account. Again. There was a pause on his end, then a rustle of papers. Same IP region? Bend? Same device ID? iPhone. Same model we flagged in the last report. He exhaled. Got it. I'll escalate the documentation. She's leaving a trail that'll be hard to walk away from. Good. We exchanged a few more logistical details before I hung up. I didn't feel better, but I felt sure. I went to the voice memo app on my phone, tapped record, and lifted it to my lips. This isn't just family drama anymore. You're writing your own ending. I saved it, named the file for her. Then I deleted the app from my phone, not out of spite, just to cut the final cord. The screen went blank, and I set the phone face down on the desk. The room was dark, save for the glow of the streetlights outside. I didn't turn on more lights. I didn't put on music. I didn't reach out to anyone. I just sat there, not angry, not grieving, ready. The sun hadn't fully set when my phone buzzed with a message from Natalie, a former coworker I hadn't spoken to in months. We'd been friendly once, the kind of workplace allies who shared snacks and the occasional late-afternoon complaint about printer jams and impossible deadlines, but never enough history to warrant a random text. So when her name lit up on my screen, I assumed it was a forwarded meme, a leftover holiday message. Something light, something harmless. It wasn't. Attached was a screenshot. Annual Family Legacy Appreciation Dinner, honoring Celine Jamieson. Hosted at 235 West Maple Ridge. Time, 7:30 p.m., December 31st. I stared at the address. My pulse slowed. 235 West Maple Ridge. That was the vacation home, the one that legally belonged to me. The message followed. Didn't know this was your sister? Looks like a big deal. Thought you'd be there? No, I wouldn't be there. I hadn't even been invited. I clicked through to the event's social media page. The live stream was already scheduled. Hashtags in motion, streaming like a faucet left running. Hashtag family legacy. Shash Celine Strong. Shash women who lead. The banner image hit me next. A familiar scene. A woman laughing beside a lake, glass of wine raised mid-toast. The house behind her glowed like something from a dream. It was Celine. But the photo? I had taken it 3 summers ago. I remembered the moment, the golden light, the angle, the way she insisted on one more shot because her smile wasn't quite right. I'd taken that photo. I'd cropped it carefully, warmed the tones, softened the edges. I had posted it on my account with a caption she never acknowledged. And now it sat beneath her monogram, branded as part of her personal legacy. A curated artifact in a story she'd stolen wholesale. I plugged in my laptop, sat on the couch, and waited. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the stream went live. The screen showed the dining room of the vacation home. The chandelier, one I had personally paid to have rewired, shimmered above a long, candlelit table. Guests clapped. Some stood. I recognized faces. People from church, from board meetings, old family friends who had always believed Celine's version of the truth. And there she was, standing at the head of the table in a pale gold dress, glowing like a prophet wrapped in silk. She tapped her spoon against her wine glass. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said, smiling that rehearsed, practiced smile. "It means so much to celebrate the legacy we've built." Legacy. We. "I've learned so much over the years," she continued, "about perseverance, about what it takes to hold a family together, especially through financial hardship." My hands froze on the keyboard. "I know not everything was perfect," she said, eyes glistening under the chandeliers I'd chosen. "But I've always done what needed to be done, to protect our name, our reputation, this house." I muted the video. No more. This wasn't just performance anymore. This was identity theft dressed in pearls and praise. I opened the folder on my desktop, the one labeled, "Burn when necessary." It held everything. 17 seconds of video from last year. Celine at a family fundraiser, swapping her name tag with mine before stepping in front of a camera for press shots. PDFs, loan documents, screenshots of the deed, title, property tax records. Every signature that traced back to me, every lie she'd told through omission. Clean, time-stamped, undeniable. I uploaded the video, then the documents. Set the post to go live at midnight. Captioned it simply, "Every legacy has a ledger." Outside, fireworks were already starting, early bursts of red and gold over rooftops, children's laughter riding up from the sidewalks. Somewhere, a bottle rocket cracked open the night. But I didn't look. I sat on the rug, legs crossed, palms pressed flat against the hardwood floor. Steadying myself, grounding every part of me that used to reach toward validation. At 11:42, my phone buzzed. Lumen, my cousin. She had stayed quiet through all of it, not cruel, not complicit, just distant, watching. Her message was short. "I'm sorry." Then another. "I should have said something years ago. I saw how they treated you, how they leaned on you, then made it all about Celine. You were always the strong one. They just didn't want to see it." I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have written, "Thank you." I could have said, "Too little, too late." But I didn't. Not yet. Some apologies take years to arrive, some land just on time. Hers, I decided, was the second kind. I locked my phone and stood, walked to the window. The fireworks now filled the sky, bursts of color reflecting in the glass panes like ghost lights from another world. People lined the street below, bundled in jackets, waving sparklers, cheering into the cold. I opened the window. Midnight. The post went live. I didn't wait for comments. I didn't watch for fallout. I didn't scroll for defense or spin or selective silence. Behind me, my phone began to vibrate. One buzz, then another. then another. Dozens. Maybe more. I didn't pick it up. I just stood there. Cold air filled the room, rushing around me, pushing out the scent of candles and quiet desperation. It felt clean, bracing, like oxygen. Let them panic, let them twist, let them run damage control. I was already done. The morning of January 3rd slipped into my apartment quietly, a kind of gray Portland morning where the sky never quite chooses rain or restraint. Clouds hung low over the roofs across the street, pale and heavy, and the light that managed to filter in through the windows felt thin, like paper. It was the kind of day that seemed to pause between seasons, a day built for silence rather than spectacle. I sat on the edge of the couch with a pair of scissors in my hand, slowly snipping at the frayed wire of the Christmas lights I'd strung up alone over the window 3 weeks earlier. One bulb had gone dark sometime around New Year's. I hadn't replaced it. Maybe I'd been waiting for some occasion to mark the moment. Maybe I just liked the way the string glowed imperfectly in the corner, like a heartbeat. I unplugged the strand from the wall socket, rolled the cord into a loose, untidy coil, and set it carefully inside a clear plastic bin labeled in black marker. Seasonal. Keep. Not because the lights mattered in any real sense, not because I was sentimental about them, but because they had been a gift I'd given myself. No one else, no obligation, no compromise. Mine. The apartment was still. Not the heavy, aching stillness of loneliness, but the quiet that makes space for breath. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, the tile cold against my soles, and put on water for tea. Earl Grey today, just because. The kettle hissed softly while I stood at the counter, palms pressed flat on either side of the mug, feeling the edge of warmth creep into my fingers. When the tea was ready, I carried it to the kitchen table and opened my laptop out of habit. Receipts. A calendar reminder about a client call next week. Nothing from my family. Nothing from Celine. Nothing from anyone whose messages used to arrive like orders disguised as invitations. I closed the laptop, turned off notifications, pushed the phone to the far edge of the table. I sat there for an hour, letting the tea cool, letting the room settle. It was nearly noon when I saw the envelope. It had been shoved halfway through the mail slot in the door, bent slightly at one corner. I picked it up expecting junk mail, a credit card offer, something with a window and a barcode. But this envelope was hand-folded. No stamp, no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of wide-ruled notebook paper, folded 3 times. The pencil marks were crooked, the pressure uneven, as if written on a lap. Dear Aunt Madeline, Mom says you're not coming back. But I miss when you made hot chocolate and didn't talk much, just stayed. I told them you were real. No signature. But I didn't need one. The handwriting was unmistakable. My youngest niece. I read it again. And again. My chest didn't clench the way I'd imagined it would. It didn't even ache. Instead, something soft opened inside me, like a frozen window finally pushed ajar. The words weren't about forgiveness. They weren't even about understanding. They were about seeing. She had seen me, not as the woman who paid the bills, not as the sister who got erased from photos and credit lines, not as the convenient helper who held the backdrop steady so someone else could stand in the light. Just me. I went to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a sticky note. In small, even letters, I wrote, "I'm still real. I'm just where I'm seen now." I didn't fold it into an envelope. I didn't seal it. I didn't rush to mail it back. Instead, I walked to the bedroom and opened the old wooden recipe box on my dresser, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were index cards with my grandmother's handwriting, ginger molasses cookies, Dad's chili recipe, the turkey brine we used exactly once, little fragments of lives and meals and traditions. I slipped my note between 2 recipe cards and closed the lid. That would be my reply. Not a text, not a speech, just a truth folded small and kept safe. An answer she might never see, but that would exist nonetheless. Later that afternoon, I pulled on a sweater and walked down to the corner coffee shop. It wasn't fancy, just one of those small Portland cafes where the floors are worn smooth, the baristas remember your name if you come twice, and nobody feels the need to speak above a murmur. The girl at the counter smiled when she saw me. "Oat milk today?" she asked. I nodded. And a little honey this time. She rang it up, no questions, no assumptions, no sideways glances. Just an exchange. I sat by the window with my drink, watching the slow movement of light across the sidewalk. Across the street, a stranger helped an elderly man out of a cab. A child in a red jacket spilled hot cocoa and tried to hide it under his boot. The wind teased a banner loose from its string. Life went on, messy and unglamorous and real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had been erased from the middle of it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't rebuilding anything they had torn down. I was simply living where I was known, where my name didn't need defense, where presence was enough. I looked down at the cup in my hands and whispered, more to the air than to anyone. They thought I wanted revenge. A pause. Steam rising. But all I ever wanted was to matter quietly. I sipped the drink. Outside, the clouds began to thin, breaking apart just enough for a sliver of sunlight to thread its way through the branches and across the glass, landing like a benediction on the table. Forgiveness isn't required for peace. Distance is. And on that gray January day, with the last of the holiday lights packed away and a crooked letter tucked into an old recipe box, I realized I'd finally chosen the kind of distance that isn't exile but freedom. The kind you don't run into but build for yourself, soft and steady, like light creeping into a room at dawn. Sometimes, the deepest kind of healing isn't found in forgiveness. It's found in reclaiming your voice after years of silence. Madeline's story is a reminder that family isn't defined by blood, but by respect, truth, and presence. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? What did it cost you, and what did it set free? If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories that speak to the heart.